I think I have found the most useless AI tool. I realize that's a bold statement. Useless AI tool is a term that covers a lot of territory, and that territory is expanding all the time. But once I tell you about this, I think even if you don't think it's the most useless, you'll at least agree with me that it is one of the more unproductive, alleged productivity aids ever developed. The AI tool I'm talking about is Gemini's Audio Overview feature. It's one of several ways Google has integrated Gemini into Google Docs and Google Drive. I do almost all my writing in Google Docs. I use Google Drive for cloud storage and to share files with people. And because of that, I subscribe to Google One, which is like the premium version of Google Drive that gives you more storage space and access to other features. One of those features is Gemini, Google's AI, basically Google's version of ChatGPT. I don't really use it. One reason I don't use it is I have the same problems with AI as it currently exists that many of you have. I'm worried about its environmental impact. I don't like the fact that it's trained on other people's work without their permission and without sharing any of the profits generated by the model their work helped to make possible. And I really don't like how generative AI is being pushed as a way to replace human artists in creative spaces. Okay, I guess that one reason is actually three reasons. Anyway, another reason I don't find much use for Gemini is that it's just not that useful. When I'm writing a script in Google Docs, there's a sidebar with buttons for collaboration tools, add a comment, suggest an edit, and there's one that says, help me write. And if you click that, you'll get a pop-up that allows you to enter a prompt into Gemini that will generate suggestions to, theoretically, help you write. And I don't need that. Thanks for cluttering up my document in an attempt to be helpful, but I'm good. I know how to write. I can do it myself. Lots of other people who use Google Docs must feel the same way because lately Gemini's attempts to get me to please use it for something have gotten noticeably sweatier. In addition to the Help Me Write button on the sidebar and the occasional Help Me Write prompt that appears in the doc itself if I stop typing for too long, Gemini will sometimes pop up with a random suggestion for one of its other tools. Did you know I could do this? I could do this for you. It's like a waiter that won't leave me alone. Why is there even a waiter here? This is my house. Anyway, the other day, one of those random suggestions popped up and it said something like, would you like me to generate an audio overview of this document? I had just finished the script I was writing and I was kind of fried, creatively speaking, and I thought, oh, what the hell, let me see what this is. Gemini also has the ability to summarize documents, and it's always pitching that. I go into my Google Drive and highlight one of my scripts, and Gemini's like, I can summarize this document. Do you want me to summarize this document? What about the folder? I can summarize the entire folder for you, man. Just tell me. Just tell me what to do. So I assumed the audio overview tool would be a variation of that, a summary of the content of the document. But instead of putting it in writing for me to read, Gemini would put it into a form that I could listen to. I took pity on poor, eager, neglected Gemini, and I told it to make me an audio overview of the script I had just written. It was the tribute to Peter David that I released last week. In a few minutes, the audio overview was ready, and when I listened to it, this is what I heard.
Okay, so we've got this pile of research in front of us today. Notes, articles, all this stuff you pulled together, and it's all pointing towards one guy.
Right.
Maybe not a name everyone knows instantly, but wow, incredibly important in comics, books, TV. We're going deep on Peter David.
Exactly. And what really jumps out from these sources is he wasn't just, a writer. He was like the definition of a working writer.
Yep.
Super successful, really influential, but defined by just the sheer amount and the consistency of his work everywhere.
Yeah, that's the thing. He worked with some massive characters, huge franchises, but it wasn't always about the one giant hit. It was about constantly writing, constantly selling stories, making a real living. Just doing the work, project after project.
And you wanted us to dig into this material today to really figure out what was his impact? What does a career like his tell you about being a pro writer? What can you actually learn from how he operated?
Mission accepted.
Yeah.
Let's unpack this. We'll pull out the key stuff about his career, how he thought about the work, and, why he's such a big deal to the people who do know his name.
And it goes on like that for another 12 minutes. It's not a summary of the document. It's a loose, conversational discussion about the document carried on by two imaginary people. It's essentially a custom-generated AI podcast about the script that I wrote, which, neat, I suppose. I'll give Gemini this much. Once I realized what Audio Overview was, I couldn't wait to feed it another document and see what the non-existent podcast hosts had to say about it. A combination of curiosity and befuddlement overtook me. I told Gemini to make an audio overview of the script for my latest Star Trek Retro review, which at the time was my review of the classic Star Trek episode Requiem for Methuselah.
Digging into this episode through the source material, it just shows how much they packed in. You've got mortal historical figures, android girlfriends, space plagues, tiny ships.
And yeah, as the source keeps noting, the contrivances stack up. Spock's art and music knowledge, McCoy's instant android diagnosis. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? When a story throws this many wild, sometimes contradictory ideas at you, why is it often the most absurd or convenient details that actually, stick with you the most?
Yeah, that's a great point. So what does this all mean? We've unpacked a deep dive that's just full of legends, artificial love, and, well, a whole heap of plot devices. As the source shows, the episode is juggling these big themes, love, loneliness, mortality, right alongside some truly out there sci-fi concepts.
Yeah, definitely.
That one's 6 minutes long in total. So here's the thing about this. Like many other AI tools that have been shoved in our faces these last few years by tech companies eager to convince us that whatever it is about to shift the paradigm or alter the landscape or change the way we do whatever we're trying to do, this audio overview tool is technically impressive. The two voices in these AI-generated discussions sound very realistic. They take breaths, they use filler words like and ah and you know. They talk over each other. The effect is convincing. It sounds like two people talking to each other. But as with those other supposedly revolutionary AI-powered tools, despite what a technical accomplishment it is, when I look at Gemini's audio overview, I can't get past one pretty important question. What's it for? I know what it does, but what's it supposed to do for me as a writer? How does listening to two ghosts in the Google machine chat for a few minutes about a document I uploaded help me complete my project? How does it boost my productivity or enhance my creativity or do whatever else the Adderall-snorting tech bros who developed it think I want it to do? It's not as if their conversation contains any insight. Google refers to the discussions generated by Audio Overview as deep dives, but they're actually about as shallow as you can get. The speakers in these audio overviews don't actually have opinions about anything they've read. How could they? They have no experiences to form any context in which to form an opinion. They don't have taste. They don't have perspective. They don't have expertise. The content of their conversations consists of, essentially, summaries of the source material dressed up as a breezy chat between friends, co-hosts. Who even are they? They're nobody. How does it help my creative process to upload my script or my research or whatever it might be into an AI and then listen to a fake podcast about it hosted by nobody? If I may paraphrase another person who doesn't exist, but who is the product of the imaginations of people who did and do exist and is therefore more real than either of the voices in an audio overview, whoever developed this was so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they never stopped to think why they should. Maybe, this is what I'm thinking as I'm writing the script for this, maybe I've been too narrow in my evaluation of Audio Overview. After all, a multi-billion-dollar tech giant like Google wouldn't invest who knows how much time and money into developing a product and then foist it onto the public if it was totally useless, right? That would never happen. Both of the documents from which I had Gemini generate an audio overview were works of nonfiction, my tribute to Peter David and my review of an old Star Trek episode. What if I gave it a work of fiction to chew on? Perhaps when faced with a purely creative work, the resulting deep dive might be a little deeper. You think? What do you think? I fed Gemini the script for one of my Stuffy and Friends videos. If you don't watch those, they're the ones where I, playing a highly fictionalized version of myself who's just a complete dope, can you imagine? Interact with a group of talking stuffed animals. The script I uploaded to Gemini was for the Christmas episode I wrote last year, Stuffy and Friends and the Holiday Heist, which centers around an elf on the shelf who infiltrates the house and attempts to rob the place on Christmas Eve. I'm happy with how it turned out, but could it have been even better if I'd only sought the counsel of an audio overview? Here's what insightful critique male voice and female voice had to offer regarding the ending of my little Christmas play.
So the elf's disarmed, defeated, now what? Call the cops.
That's the question they face. But Steve, according to the sources, he makes the call.
Not to the police, though. No, he decides against it. He sees the elf maybe not as purely evil, but maybe, desperate, driven by need in a cold world, kind of echoing Hans's points.
So he decides to show mercy.
Yeah. Argues he's not the judge, hopes maybe this act of kindness might, inspire the elf to change. A real moment of holiday clemency, like out of a classic story.
Redemption possibility.
Yeah.
So they let the elf go, give him a chance. Nice moment. But here's the kicker. The sources reveal this big, ironic twist.
And it's crucial, this twist. It's the consequence of that mercy meeting the elf's actions. After the elf leaves, Steve goes to the safe.
Expecting it to be unlocked, right?
Totally. The sources emphasize this. It's usually unlocked, combination just left on the last number. All he ever does is turn the handle.
But it's locked. Solid.
Exactly. The elf, trying so hard to crack a safe that was basically open all along, he inadvertently scrambled the dial. Locked it completely.
Oh my gosh, the one thing he couldn't actually do, open it, and he ended up locking it by trying.
Precisely. And because Steve showed mercy, let him go, the elf walks away, having created this brand new problem for Steve, a safe that's now really locked.
Wow.
They perceived the irony of the ending. That's cool. Though they continually refer to the script as the source, as though it's a record of some actual event. They're able to recognize the dramatic structure, but they're apparently incapable of engaging with it explicitly as a work of fiction. Everything to Audio Overview is just a source to be summarized. Again, this is a neat demonstration of a technology, but it's a technology that doesn't seem to have any real purpose. The conversation about my Stuffy script is just a chatty summary, the two voices taking turns describing what happens. They do grasp the meaning of it in the most literal sense, and they do recognize the presence of basic literary concepts, but the conversation doesn't add anything. It doesn't offer a different perspective. It's not a deep dive. It's as vapid as you can get. In that way, at least, it does make for a plausible imitation of quite a few podcasts, but nevertheless, I guess if I were working on a project with a lot of different sources, I could feed them all into Gemini and have it make an audio overview of my research. But if I'm writing something informed by those sources, shouldn't I read the sources myself? And shouldn't I decide what to do with them once I've read them, how to incorporate them into what I'm writing, how to synthesize what they have to say into what I have to say? Isn't that the writing? Why would I need or want the help of an artificially generated shallow podcast chat for that? Unless Google eventually decides to pull the plug on it, I'm sure this tool will continue to evolve. Maybe someday it will be sophisticated enough to be of some use to people like me. I'm not holding my breath. And even if it does somehow get to that point where it can meaningfully critique and evaluate rather than simply summarize, I can't imagine choosing the evaluation of an AI over that of a human being with taste I trust and thoughts and feelings I respect and value. But you never know, right? For now, the only utility of this tool I can think of is for students who need to write a book report in a hurry for a book they haven't read. Seems appropriate. Generative AI has been around for a few years now, and it's still only truly useful to those who want to cheat. Now, you know what I have to do before I wrap this up, right? I fed the script for this video. Everything up to and including it's only useful to those who want to cheat into Gemini, and asked for an audio overview of my video about how useless Audio Overview is. If this was an episode of Star Trek, that's how Captain Kirk would kill Gemini, but that's not what I was trying to do. That's not the main thing I was trying to do. I was mostly just curious what my two favorite fake podcasters would have to say about what I've had to say about them.
What did the author say it sounded like?
So on a technical level, pretty impressive according to them. The voices themselves sound real, apparently very human-like.
Okay.
And they even use like filler words. And sometimes they talk over each other a bit, like actual people chatting might do.
Right. So the simulation of conversation is good. The tech is there.
Yeah.
But the substance, what are the AIs actually saying? Did it offer any, deep thoughts?
And that's really where the criticism comes, in sharp focus.
Yeah.
Well, the sound was impressive. The author found the content was, well, really shallow. They call the conversations breezy, chatty summaries.
Breezy. Not exactly a deep dive then.
Not at all,
Yep.
based on this account. The piece really stresses that. There was apparently no real insight, no new perspective, no expertise shown by the AI voices. They just described what was already in the document.
They just report back what's there.
Sounds like they've got a pretty good handle on it, huh? Sure they do, because I've got a pretty good handle on it. I made them discuss a script I wrote about how useless they are, and they didn't even know enough to be insulted. I could have uploaded a document where I wrote, the hosts of those audio overview podcasts sound like assholes, and if they were real, I'd hunt them down and drown them in buckets of their own piss, and they'd respond by having a breezy little chat where they take turns talking about how that is, in fact, something that was written in the source document. Why would I accept writing help from people with so little self-respect? Anyway, I took the transcript of that entire audio overview of my script about audio overview, and I pasted it into a new Google Doc, and then I had Gemini make an audio overview of that. So, an audio overview of the audio overview of my video script about audio overview.
Okay, so first off, what is this feature supposed to be doing? It's not just a screen reader, right?
No, not at all. That's what's interesting. The source says it creates a conversational discussion about your document.
A conversation, like between
two AI voices. They describe them as pretty realistic.
So AI voices chatting about your text.
Yeah, like they're having a little back and forth about what's in the file you give it.
Huh.
If this were a Star Trek The Next Generation episode, that's how multiple versions of Captain Picard from different time periods would accidentally create a paradox with the power to destroy the universe. This not being a TNG episode, nothing nearly as interesting happened. The audio overview of the audio overview of the script about audio overview was mostly just a paraphrase of the audio overview of the script about audio overview. Given a transcript of itself talking about a source as a source, the tool basically just said what it said about the original source in slightly different words. One thing I did notice about both of those audio overviews, they both missed the fact that the earlier audio overview about my Stuffy and Friends script was able to at least recognize the presence of irony in the ending. Remember the clip I played from that one where the AI podcast hosts note the irony of the elf attempting to crack the safe and unknowingly scrambling the combination because the safe was open all along? And now Steve, who owns the safe, can't get into it either because he doesn't have the combination, which is why he left it unlocked in the first place. They don't have anything insightful to say about it, but they at least recognize the literary device being used. Here's how the audio overview of the video script about audio overview, the last one, the most recent one I talked about, describes how the Stuffy and Friends audio overview describes the ending of the Stuffy and Friends script.
According to this author, they stressed there was no real insight, no new perspective, no expertise. The AIs were just, pointing out things in the document, identifying keywords maybe, but not really doing anything with them.
They mentioned that specific example from their fiction piece, didn't they? The one with the elf.
Ah, yes. That really highlights the point. They had this story, apparently with an ironic ending.
Where the elf tries to break in but locks the safe instead.
Right. And the AI chat mentioned that plot point. It literally said, the elf locks the safe. Pulled it straight from the text.
Okay.
Yeah.
But did it get the irony?
Yeah.
Did it comment on the storytelling?
Nope. Not a bit. Just stated it as a fact found in the document. No sense of the humor, the narrative twist, the author's intent. Nothing like that.
So it can read, but it doesn't really understand.
That seems to be the author's takeaway. It can process the words, but not the meaning or the context beneath them.
And sometimes, apparently, it can't even process the words. Because what actually happened is the opposite of what was just described. The earlier audio overview did recognize the narrative twist and the presence of irony in the Stuffy and Friends story. But somehow, when the subsequent audio overview read the transcript of that previous audio overview, it read the bit describing the recognition of irony as describing a lack of recognition of irony. Which is ironic? Is it? Ever since the discourse about that Alanis Morissette song, I'm never sure. Anyway, point is, even if you're hoping to use audio overview as a tool to generate accessible, easily digestible summaries of notes or research for a larger project, notes and research which, for some reason, you're not reading and summarizing yourself as part of the writing process, but whatever, I would recommend against it because just based on my own admittedly limited experiments with it, Audio Overview's reading comprehension is a tad unreliable, even when it's attempting to comprehend a transcript of its own words. Most useless AI tool doesn't sound like such a bold statement now, does it? Except, I don't think it's entirely accurate. Because, like pretty much every other AI tool aimed at helping with the creative process, it's not a tool. It's a toy. But in the interest of fairness to this computer program that is not a person and is therefore not actually entitled to fairness, I'll let male speaker and female speaker from the audio overview of this video about audio overview take the floor one last time.
When you encounter a new AI feature, maybe take a second and ask yourself, does this actually help me? Does it genuinely add something valuable for what I'm trying to achieve?
Yeah, does it offer real insight? Make things more efficient? Give you a capability you didn't have? Or does it feel a bit like what this author described? More of a cool demo maybe, but not really hitting the mark on practical usefulness for your specific goals? It's a good way to filter through all the new AI stuff coming out.
What a couple of geniuses, huh?